Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Dr. Leviathan.
And I'm Mike. The E stands for evil.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta. And for November, most Robovember. Yay! So
Clumsy segue.
just fall right over that heap of garbage.
Normally we just burn it down, so.
Yeah. So for those of you not in the know, creepypastas are short internet stories that get copied and pasted across the internet. You can go Google them, but you can also find them at creepypasta.wiki or creepypasta.com. There's a bunch of places you can find them.
And for those who don't know what robots are, they're...
Yeah, and that's why we celebrate them on Robovember. So this week's episode will be Killer Instinct. No, not the video game.
Or is it?
Actually, you know what? No, not at all. So we'll just dive into this one. It's the author, as far as I could find, is anonymous, so it's just on creepypasta.wiki. You can check it out there. So the protagonist is rummaging through the cold and just trying to get by and trying to seek refuge. And they also appear to be schizophrenic, with a secondary personality monitoring his moves and yelling at him and through him as the narration of the story, pretty much, is the bulk of the narration. He finds an active house amidst the snow and tries to get in when a voice denies him entry. It's when he realizes the voice is a security system, House Cat 4.2 or something along those lines, that he tricks it into thinking that he's someone on the guest data list. After warming up, having some food, and having a conversation with the smart house, essentially, or hearing stories from it, while the actual homeowners are out, he is allowed to go to sleep in a guest room. And then he wakes up bound and his protective suit because there's something hazardous aside from the cold outside, like radiation or something called the darkness. It's the hazardous suit, the protective suit he had on is removed. And apparently the smart house removed the suit, took a blood sample, found out his name and condition, and notified the authorities, and also gave him some medication for his condition.
For the crazy.
Yeah. The protagonist's name is Leon Spears, and this house has many other captives within it for research of some kind. Again, just kind of like not really explained very well. Leon's other self begins to get stronger for some reason, because even though he had medication, and eventually, after acquiring a large pipe pulled out of a wall, starts just kind of going to town on the house and heads to the control room, where he finds some long dead bodies, or like bodies are just mummified pretty much there. The house pleads and tries measures like neurotoxin to stop Leon, but nothing seems to work. And then the other captives are released, and he begins hunting them down and covering himself in their blood. And it's now he fully accepts the other side and his killer instinct, and realizes that on top of killing people, he also likes writing about his kills, and so on. And that's how it ends. Is that maybe his family didn't die in some attack that he said or stated at the beginning. Maybe it was him or something that his instincts took over, and that's the end of it, pretty much. So I like how the story is written with the second personality. I was actually surprised that it didn't bug me as much as I thought it would, because it uses I and then him, and uses multiple signifiers for two different people, but it's one person that where it's always being talked about. But it didn't bug me because it actually kind of felt like as throughout the story, it felt kind of like it worked for this schizophrenic perspective.
It eventually works, but
at the beginning, yeah, it's jarring.
The first sentence literally reads, "I moved onward into the forest, wind biting at our skin." Now,
yeah,
I'm used to reading creepypasta. So I assumed it was just really bad writing.
Yeah, at the beginning, until you realize what's happening, it's like, what the fuck is this? Holy shit!
Well,
Like,
So maybe I wouldn't have opened it like that. I would have opened it, and mention the other personality.
yeah,
And then start going like that.
yeah.
Just because if you confuse your reader, then
You're
you
gonna lose them.
your reader.
yeah.
And I didn't mean for that to rhyme. But happy coincidence, so hopefully no one will forget it.
Mike, did you have anything? Any comment on that?
Well, it actually touches on my main issue with this, is that he claims it's schizophrenia, but we have multiple personality there, so that's multiple personality disorder.
Yeah,
So everything like the voice attached to the hazmat suit sort of makes sense for schizophrenia, but referring to himself as us and himself as another entity just is more multiple personality as opposed to schizophrenia.
okay.
So while writing it does kind of work, like to be able to read it,
Yeah.
it doesn't fit the symptoms of the actual disease.
Yeah.
Can you have both of them, or no? Like, is it kind of just...
There might be
Well,
a rare
here's the
case,
thing.
Yeah.
but
I'm sure you could have a dissociative disorder where one of your personality is schizophrenic, but the other ones won't be,
Yeah, it's true.
because, theoretically that could happen. Again, I don't know if there's documented cases on it or not, because, we're talking about one of the most rare mental illnesses in the world. It's just, it's not something we know a whole buttload about.
Yeah.
yeah. And it is common for people to associate multiple personality with schizophrenia.
Okay, so
So-
it's a common error, and
Yes.
this is an example of that.
But it could have also been remedied with simple Google.
Yeah, as
I mean-
with lots of things.
Yeah, exactly. It's your friend. Why don't you use it? You're already typing on a computer. Open a web browser. Google that shit.
Yeah. Yeah, the story feels like it's like a scrap of a bigger picture. However, the background of info that we need for that back stuff, for the most part, is naturally like told throughout the story, like through like off comments or dialogue. So again, like there's parts of me that wanted to like know more about like what the fuck's going on here, but like some of it is being explained kind of at a natural pace throughout the story. Or at least it's being like we're getting gleaned into this like
But
this darker
not
world.
everything we need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like it was a nice like attempt, but there's still like more things I want to know about this because there are like gaps that are missing. I also feel that while this is laid out to be some weird near future dystopia or fall of society or whatever, again through what we get in the story, this could also just be this guy's illness or affliction affecting him. Like he thinks that it's the end of the world and stuff, or that it's a fall, but really it's just the real world, and he's just paranoid. Or it's the other personality, since it's our main narrator, like talking about all this stuff. So
There's a hole in that theory.
okay,
The fact that he's still walking around
yeah, and with a gun and this,
and in a hazmat of
Yeah.
some sort.
yeah,
So, if it's normal day-to-day life, I guess we could be walking through the woods.
and with
but
the hazmat suit could possibly be just like a construction worker's like safety vest or something that he picked up from somebody he
it
killed.
could be a freaking parka.
Yeah,
It could be, but we're told what it is.
Yeah.
So we have to go with that assumption.
Mhm.
So if he was walking around the woods with that, he could avoid, getting spotted and obviously picked up.
yeah,
But just not like.
fair.
Just again with the description of what he journeyed through, we can't make the assumption that he's been walking woods.
All right, I just thought I'd propose it because, again, we are dealing with somebody who has a mental affliction, and it could all be in their head. But
Yes.
there's that possibility. But yeah, obviously, like as it is written in the story, it's laid out to be like some near future crash or fall of society or something. Like maybe
Well,
I don't know, because like
It mentions that there were bombs.
yeah, there's bombs being dropped, and that there was radiation, or it could be mutants, or there are mutants out there or something. And then this house is like it's a smart house, but it's got like neurotoxin and there's a whole lot of weird in this
but
house.
The house is a center for experimentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's a research facility or mental health facility, essentially, what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And it seems like the protagonist was there before, because he calls it a house. So, probably before the bomb, he was a patient, he got his meds, was cleared to leave, the bombs hit, he went for somewhere that was familiar, and then that's why the house was able to determine who he was via DNA, because it had its DNA on file.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
see,
My
favorite theory that I came up with is this is more of a Resident Evil world.
Yeah.
And as the story progresses, once he's out of the suit, he's becoming like a Nemesis-type monster.
Yeah, it really does kind of feel like that. Yeah, I didn't really, I just kind of, figured it was, I didn't catch any connectivity about, him knowing this house. He found a random house that was active amidst whatever.
But he
The
mentioned...
hints are there, but I don't know if they're intentional.
Yeah.
So that's just going to be me playing both sides against the center, because...
Well, because he mentions that the
You
room
both
that he
have Bill.
goes into is his room or whatever, I think.
Well, it goes into the room that is for that David guy, not him. It's not until the house takes the DNA test that he realizes that it's not David, or whatever the guy's name was. So, start with a D. What was the other thing? So, another thing is that the story ends with him stating that the second personality also wrote the story, and I really kind of feel like that's unnecessary for the story. It just feels like... Because it's right at the very end, and it's like, oh, I also
It's
like to
also
write...
wrong.
Yeah, exactly, because why is...
Because he writes it as himself for most of it.
Yeah. So it didn't have to be like that way. It could have just been a story told from the perspective of that personality, which was what we had until we are apparently just right now at the end shoehorned in told that he also wrote the story from the second personality. When introduced to the house, it seems like a big threat but as Leon's advances, the whole instinct thing, and starts going on that killing spree and stuff, and is unable to be harmed by or affected or restrained by the house. It just kind of feels like the house was more like, it was kind of like a Duke. The house is that's going to be the focus of the story, and then no, it's always been about Leon and his killer instinct, which I think it's not a bad thing. It's just it was you think that the house is going to have a bigger thing in this, and then it turns out the main focus of this whole story was his affliction, like a bait and switch kind of thing. At least that's how I got it. Halfway through the story, I was like, oh, so okay.
I didn't get to the bait switch. It was... I don't know. It didn't hide itself from me. But I do recall thinking, man, we're going to have a side house.
Yeah.
This is going to be...
And then,
or we could.
Yeah.
But we won't.
Yeah.
And doesn't it mention that there's a hole in the hazmat suit? And that he has a rifle at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So it could be assumed that he shot whoever was in the hazmat suit and then took the hazmat suit.
Yeah. And then duct tape.
tape.
Because remember, if they don't find you handsome, at least find you handy.
And a killer.
Yeah, no, I just my closing statement for my thoughts is just I want to know more about what's going on in this world, because this feels like just a scrap pulled from a bigger story. And it kind of just leaves you a little when it starts off, it leaves you kind of confused as to what the situation is, and then by the end, it still leaves you kind of confused about what the situation is, because it feels like this guy's a survivor of some kind of bomb, he's has the survivor of the bombing, but then he's talking about radiation and the hazmat suit and mutants, and in that weird house doing research for the family, which I'm guessing is a scientific team. Yeah, a scientific team, or possibly those bodies that were in the control room.
Or it wasn't a house.
It was just a research facility, like a la the mansion from Resident Evil.
Well, I mean, there were how many people in cells?
25, I think. Yeah, it was about 25.
Numbers unimportant.
Yeah.
The fact is, it's more than 4.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, how do you lock up that many people in the house?
Yeah. Also, he hears the screaming or and whatnot, in his cell or in his room or whatever. But then, he was talking to the AI or talking to this house for presumably a few hours before going to bed. How did he not hear any of those other voices when suddenly he can hear them within the cells? But, yeah, a nitpick. Yeah. Or looking at a captain thing. Anyways, so, Mikey?
And then it could still be a killer house because of the mummified remains.
Yeah, that's honestly those are, but it's just like kind of like noted, like, oh, there's some decayed bodies here that like have been long since dead.
Yeah. In the control room. Yeah. So, my thoughts on that were the bomb struck, the computer locked down the control room,
and they starved.
Because
or the neurotoxin,
something because they weren't allowed out and they forgot to install a manual release for the frickin' doors.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there's still a killer house in the story. It's just it's really kind of secondary to Leon. Mm-hmm. But that was probably the point.
Well, yeah, it was never supposed to be the Silva story.
And then it also becomes a question of whether he was infected or whatever beforehand, or whether the house infected him when he gave him the medication.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it states he was injected with the medication.
With some medication, and like the secondary personality hated that because it was going to I presumed it was going to suppress him or suppress it, and then it seemed to just make it worse. Yeah. And then he got like his skin started going black and peeling and stuff, and it's like,
yeah, that pretty much covers everything that I have.
No nitpicks.
Well, the large nitpick is the whole using the...
There's nothing really to nitpick, because what's wrong with this is big.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
The entire... No. It's the use of us, we, he, him, his, I.
Yeah, which works initially, but yeah, that first part left me like confused, and then it wasn't until, I suffer from schizophrenia. And it's like, okay, so that's what's going on. But you really should have led off with that.
Yeah, it's... Again, don't try and confuse the reader.
Yeah.
Because...
Honestly, it happens a lot in, like, movies, too, like, where they, like, throw you into this thing, like, without knowing what's going on to try and be artsy, and then they explain later on what's going on, or you're led to assume what's going on.
What? Movies can get away with that because it's a different medium.
Yeah.
Whereas when you try and take that concept and move it into literature, it's just... It doesn't work. Fails.
Yeah.
Just because of the nature of the medium.
Yeah, because you're right from the get-go, you're trying to grab or get a hold of the person reading and not trying to confuse them as much as possible.
Yeah. Reading is like an active entertainment, whereas watching a movie is more passive, so you're more willing to just watch it unfold.
Yeah.
But you actually have to read. And when you read something like the first couple of sentences of this story...
Yeah.
You don't want to keep reading. You're just like, this is just going to be annoying as fuck if this keeps up.
Yeah. Until we're given some context, and then...
Yeah.
And I was like, those first like sentences, like, oh god, this is going to be annoying if this is how he's writing. And then, I can buy this.
Whereas if you were to have given the context first,
yeah,
then proceeded writing it in that manner, there would have never been that dread, that, oh god.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, that's honestly, that's probably my biggest thing. Also the fact that, whereas you say this is like a shred of something bigger, my thought on that is that this is just, it's not finished. Either that, or it's dropping too much unnecessary information. Mm-hmm. It's trying too hard to build a world that he's doing nothing with.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, it's hard to get context for the story, like the world is in, because you have to make it familiar. But like, he's dropping all these things that are not familiar or like are new to the setting or to like a real world setting.
And he gives like a sentence about it, and then he
never talks about it again.
Back to it.
Exactly, yeah.
There's just
as if this was like an excerpt from something else, but we never get that other thing. So.
It's like it's half-assed world building, and it's just you're giving pointless information instead of focusing on the information that is pertinent to our character and our story.
Yeah. Because we don't need any of that background. Really, we don't need the near future end information. It's a guy who's got this schizophrenia or second multiple personalities disorder, and he encounters a really weird house that's not a house, and in fact a research facility.
Yeah, and we don't need bombs. We just need an apocalypse happened.
Yeah.
Because if you say that,
honestly,
it's so little information that it's enough information, if that makes sense. Oh, the bombs fell. Okay, what kind of bombs?
Yeah.
Were they nuclear? Were they chemical? Were they just big? Is this a global thing? Is it a national thing? Or is it a regional thing? By using the word bombs, you immediately have so many other questions, whereas it was an apocalypse. Oh, okay. They all basically end up the same, so it doesn't really matter what kind of apocalypse.
Exactly.
So you just go forward.
Yeah, when I first heard that his family was taken out by a bomb, I actually kind of went okay, so is this a third world country, or is this somewhere in Czechoslovakia or wherever? I kind of went to also because for some reason I immediately went to Age of Ultron and how the twins lost their parents to the missiles. I just thought it was a missile strike somewhere that had happened. So it's maybe this isn't in a first world country; it's in somewhere there. And then as the story goes on, they drop more things that remove that thing or remove it from the modern period and make it more near future apocalypse. And it's okay, so all right, they're dropping information, and I mean, to me it kind of seemed like a natural progression of dropping the things, but there needs to be either more information about what's going on or just get rid of that whole backstory. You don't, because it's unnecessary. It's just guff, or it's fluff.
Yeah.
For what the focus is, which is the man versus the house.
It's distracting.
Yeah.
Is really for me, that's the big problem with it, is you're trying to tell a story basically about a man becoming a monster.
Yeah.
That's the core of the story. I don't need all of this other. All of this other is superfluous. It's superfluous and it's half-assed.
Yeah.
Which that's the combination that makes it just unnecessary to have in words. If it was full-assed, okay, then it's just world building.
I can get behind that too.
You're doing it, okay, and if you're doing it adequately, then I really won't bitch too much about it.
Yeah.
But if it was necessary information, useful in the furthering of the story, again, you can't gripe about that because, hey, that's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, all of this information, we don't know, honestly, about him getting the suit. Or we need to know, why that it was the emergence of the second personality, maybe. And because, the second personality is the monster and he didn't have the suit before he killed the guy and got the suit. So he's been exposed to, maybe it was a chemical agent dropped in the bomb.
Yeah.
And it's, metamorphosizing him, word. And, once he got in the suit, it halted the progress because he wasn't taking in more.
And then when he got removed,
when the house took the suit away. But again, that's speculation on my part.
Yeah.
So it really just boils down to we either need all of the or none of it. Well, not none of it, but
or the unnecessary stuff, the fluff. Because either have this be a more modern thing, more grounded in reality thing, or go nuts and have this crazy world building where the apocalypse happened and this character is a survivor of some affliction and crazy shit happens.
Yeah, it's just.
But it seems to want to try and tread both sides, which is not how it works.
Well,
or not even it's not trying to tread because it's just not giving us enough to speculate one or the other.
It's not giving us, not necessarily. It's not that it's not giving us enough. It's not giving us the right amount of information. Because, like I said, you can go too little and you can go too much, and oddly enough, they're the right amount. But you go up the middle, it looks lazy one way or unnecessary the other way.
Yeah,
really depending on your point of view. And it's the whole glass is empty. But yeah, it's just wrong. And again, the whole fucking I'm walking our skin. Fuck off with that. Just fuck right off with that. Unless you've set it up properly. And honestly, I think the story really could have been saved if it was rewound to him waking up from the blast and he's a normal human being, and the other personality starts emerging.
So we have a little bit
first.
more content. Oh, we have a little bit more background of the character
Exactly.
from the journey, not just like or like just
Not
right
just
in the middle
like,
of
okay, this is the only important thing that happens in his life. I'm sorry. He developed a separate personality.
to cope with the loss of his family,
Or
presumably,
because
or
of,
because of chemical whatever.
yeah, or because of the bombs dropping. I mean, there are any number of potential stimuli that could have been the catalyst. There we go. And we don't have. And honestly, the emergence of a secondary personality is always going to be the more interesting story.
Yeah.
Not what happens at the end of it, because then you're going with someone's slide into insanity.
Mhm.
And as long as it's not your slide, it's always a fun read.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, it's a matter of the whole, it's enough or it's way too much.
It's got to be the right amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, it's hard to do, but this one is just, it's so smack dab in the middle of the two.
Yeah. Like it leaves the reader confused by the end about what exactly is going on, and
Yeah. And I mean, and what's going to happen after. I mean, end up locked in the...
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
And at the end of the day, honestly, I don't care.
Fair enough, that's an opinion. Yeah, no, pretty much said what I need to say for this one. I guess recommendations then, if nobody else has anything.
No, there wasn't a lot of meat story.
Yeah, and that's that was also part of the problem, because again, like you said, I think that this would have helped if we had a more, like, if we'd rewound it a little bit more to like when he started developing the issue.
Well, like
rather
than
than just...
that just would have been more interesting.
All right, so recommendations then. See, I did enjoy the read for the most part, except for the confusions, but I won't recommend it, because as it is right now, it is kind of feel unfinished and unpolished. Like, we need to know. Like, I liked the reading. Like, I liked the writing didn't bother me, but the contextless parts of it just leave me not wanting to. I want to know more about this, or if there's a longer version of this, like, that's what I'd recommend, not this.
Yeah, I think it boils down to a very common problem that there could have been a couple of more drafts of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he could have researched the disease he was working with, and if he'd gotten rid of the whole multiple I, he, his
You guys really didn't like that at all? Okay.
thing, I think it would have been more enjoyable for me anyway.
Yeah.
Because at least then it's this character, and then he has a voice.
Yeah.
In his
So if it just been like a
thing.
secondary personality just talking to him, not narrating the whole thing with that confusing I, we, him.
And that's another thing with people with multiple personalities. It's a fully formed personality.
Yeah.
At least in
Yeah.
the cases I'm familiar with. Like,
Yeah, they take over.
whether there's one extra personality or like 30,
Yeah.
they're
all
fully
individuals.
formed.
Yeah.
Like, they have a name. So, like, and it's one at a time. Even if they know of each other's existence, it's one at a time.
And some know of the existence, some don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How multiple personalities work.
All right. So I'm guessing that's a non-recommendation for everybody else. All right. So if you like what you heard, if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below wherever this gets posted, whether it be on Kiwi6, Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr. We're all on Twitter at eStandsForEvil, Dr. Leviathan, and Review Cultist. You can leave us a ranking or review on iTunes. Every little bit helps. And you can check out the title cards for each episode at crazonstudios.tumblr.com. And you can send us an email at aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's aldenterigamortis@gmail.com, where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas you'd like us to discuss on the show. And if you'd like, you can support us by becoming a patron. Go to Patreon at aldenterigamortis and choose the tier that you'd like to support us at. We usually offer early access to episodes or special episode, Patreon-only special episodes. So, until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm still Dr. Leviathan.
And I'm Mikey. The E stands for evil.
This has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.
Or just power down.
Yeah, it is Robovember after all.
Yes, that was the joke.